दो दीवार हिला दो, गरमाओ गुलामों का दिल सोजे यकीन से, उन चक्के पर माया को जाने से लड़ा दो। सुल्तानी जमहूर का आता है ज़माना, जो नक्शे कौम तुमको नजर आए मिटा दो। जिस खेत से दरगाह को मयस्सर नहीं रोजी, उस खेत के हर गोशा गंदम को जला दो। उठो मेरी दुनिया गरीबों को जगा दो, उठो मेरी दुनिया गरीबों को जगा दो, उठो मेरी दुनिया गरीबों को जगा दो, उठो मेरी दुनिया गरीबों को जगा दो।
Thank you so much for singing that demo.
My pleasure.
So once again we find ourselves on a premise which is now almost a cliche with people who call themselves progressives, sitting at this wonderful border of India and Pakistan, trying to forge one homies, which are again, once again, more cliches. But as it goes, cliches are perhaps the most natural and most obvious state of being. So I'm pretty warm and comfortable and happy sitting here with Taimur, incredibly talented Taimur.
Thank you.
From Pakistan, and he's the founder and now the lead vocalist of the wonderful band called Laal from Pakistan. And apart from that, he's also the secretary of the Communist Mazdoor Kisan Party in Pakistan, and he teaches at LUMS, and he's just come out with a book on the class structure of Pakistan.
That's right.
So there are loads and loads of things to talk about and sing along. And so the first question I want to ask you, Taimur, is that being this progressive liberal person in Pakistan, does it get incredibly lonely at times?
Well, yes, but first of all, I wouldn't say I'm a liberal. I'm not a liberal. In fact, I'm opposed to liberalism. On a personal level, of course, you could say that I have very liberal or libertarian views, but politically I'm not a liberal. I'm a Marxist and a communist, and that can tend to get even more lonely than being a liberal in Pakistan. So, yeah, I think you're right in that score.
So what would you mean by post-liberalism?
Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm not sure that Pakistan has even reached the stage of liberalism, let alone, talking about post-liberalism. The liberal community in Pakistan is, sort of liberal in the sense, certainly in the sense that they want the implementation of human rights and equality with women, etc., and so on and so forth. And they have to struggle so hard for such basic rights that have been won in the West and in other countries of the world that I think at a mass level or at the level of society, I seriously doubt that anybody has sort of reached a stage of post-liberalism. With the exception, of course, of the progressive movement and the Marxist movement. If you can look at that as the continuity in a new form or at a qualitatively higher stage of the development of Enlightenment philosophy and liberalism. So in that context, certainly one could talk about that. But even there, I think in terms of the theoretical sphere, basic labor rights and basic trade union rights, etc., one has to fight so hard to achieve those rights that at the theoretical level it's difficult for us to sort of conceptualize, theorize, and move beyond the drab everyday sort of struggle and to win very fundamental rights.
Thing with liberalism, like you also talk about, just before this conversation, we were sitting outside and we were talking about, the middle class, right, and conservatism,
right?
And that's something I'd like to ask you a little more.
Sure, I think Pakistan since in the 1970s, Pakistan achieved there was an enormous growth of the left and of the progressive movement and liberal, democratic and progressive and Marxist and leftist ideas. As a consequence, a big part of the elite reacted to that, against that, and became politically more conservative than they were even in the past. And so we saw a phenomena of people who are personally liberal in their own families and in their own personal lives, etc., but politically conservative. Their persona, their political and public persona was very, very conservative. And I think as that sort of conservative point of view sort of spread through society, especially in the 1980s, and the education institutions, the trade union institutions and academic institutions and print journalism especially being impacted by that, we saw the eventual weaning away of the middle class from the left and progressive movement towards a more conservative and reactionary sort of point of view. And that's why you continue to see that urban middle class people tend in Pakistan to support right-wing parties. In Karachi, they support the NQM, which is though secular, but in other respects it's not a leftist party in any shape or form. In Punjab, they support the Pakistan Muslim League, either the Kaf League or the Noon League, etc.
So is that completely unique to Pakistan in your travels that you've been to India, to other places?
No, I don't think it's unique at all. I think in fact that Iran underwent something quite, went a stage further than that. The urban middle class people who supported conservative right-wing sort of opposition to Shah of Iran, etc. So that's an example of a similar situation. And of course, the Arab Spring is a very good instance where you saw this mass uprising. You saw so many people rise up, and a lot of them of course were working class people, but it really began as a middle class movement. But it didn't move into a progressive sort of direction. It rather moved into supporting the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and that sort of conservative right of centre sort of politics.
So if I would just have to, ask you to tell me in a nutshell the state of progressive movement in Pakistan.
Yeah, it would have to be a very small nut and a very small shell.
Yeah, and how what is the future?
Well, I'm always optimistic about the future, even when I have no cause to be. But the state of the left in Pakistan is that Akbar Zaidi was asked the same question. He said, "What left in Pakistan, in the context of Pakistan?" Really, the state of the Pakistani left has deteriorated rather than moving in a positive direction. But there are certain, I think, one would hope signs to be optimistic. Recently, several political parties have got together and sort of made one bigger sort of left, well, bigger is a relative term, but one united left-wing party called Awami Workers' Party. We are not part of that because programmatically we have a different sort of, we're a Marxist party, so I'm a Marxist, so we have a different point of view from the ones they have. But it shows that there is a movement towards, sort of working together for bigger ends, etc. But I think, as is the case in the context, as has been the case in the context of Pakistan, really since the 1950s, while the organized left in Pakistan is very, very small, if you look at the political parties of the left, the cultural influence of the Pakistani left on Pakistani society continues to be huge. In the past, that was through the progressive writers movement, through Faiz and Habib Jalib and Ahmed Faraz and even presently Fahmida Riaz and so many others. And even in the present, you look at what's going on in popular culture, you see that the left, amongst the intelligentsia, you see that the left continues to, the cultural left of Pakistan continues to have a very big impact on people's thinking, on challenging extremism, on challenging military's role in politics, on holding democratic or elected politicians accountable before the public, on sort of providing a counter-narrative through poetry, literature, music, dramas, especially, drama has played a very important role. Even film now is playing, I think, an increasingly important role with films like Bol and Khuda Ke Liye and other films coming out. So at the cultural level, I think, in Pakistan, the left continues to be a viable, continues to provide, within the mainstream, a viable counter-narrative. So that's the space to look out for. Because in the future, what makes me optimistic and what makes me sort of work with my music also is that in the future, arguably when political conditions are somewhat better, this vast sort of influence on society through culture can solidify in some shape.
It's a very, very interesting observation, because of course there is this great influence of the progressive writers and poets in the Pakistan cultural milieu, which is not so much, as much in India at all, and so so could you get a theoretical strand, which could explain this dichotomy of sorts?
I think. I think that's very obvious. The answer is very obvious, which is that in 1954, the Communist Party of Pakistan was banned, and thereafter to do sort of open and public Marxist or socialist politics was, really went counter to state policy, and the state repressed it, and society also, elements in society also repressed it, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the organized political left did not have the requisite space to take off. Whenever they were poised to take off, in one way or another, they were sort of broken either from their own faults internally or because of state intervention or through other means, etc. Through fascistic sort of, the student unions, etc., broken through Jamiyat and all these other things. So the organized political left was time and time again repressed in the country. So that's the main reason for its weakness. And the second reason for its weakness is what we sort of, the mistakes we made ourselves. And so those two things combined made for a very, very weak organized left. In terms of a political organization or trade union or the rest.
So you've traveled a bit in India also, and you are in Calcutta right now. But of course, the last time you were here, we still had the communist government.
That's right.
But this time, of course.
Now that I've come, it's gone away.
Yeah, it's gone away once again. So what are your observations? Just, I mean, I don't think you have spent as much time to kind of give more deeper analysis, but still,
First of all, every single time that I come to Kolkata, I am absolutely blown away by the Bengali intelligence here. Really, I mean, the level of, just in conversation after conversation, I feel that I learn so much when I come here about so many different things, about art, about literature, about music, about culture, about politics, about trade unions, about peasant organizations, history, colonialism, so many things. So that is the thing that I think impresses me the most always. This time when I've come to Calcutta, I've actually driven around quite a bit. And contrary to the kind of remarks I found in Delhi, because I found a couple of people said to me, Calcutta, it's a lovely city, but there's not much happening there. But this time around, maybe it was just the areas I was going in, I saw a lot of construction going on. With the new sort of tramway and sort of lots of buildings coming up and so on and so forth. So I think that's a pretty positive thing as well. Although, that's a layman's view, so I could be completely off the mark. Maybe they've been constructing them for the last 20 years and they're still sort of I don't know. I could be wrong. But it seems to me that it may not seem to Calcuttans here, but it seems to me that there's a lot going on over here. It's a very exciting city to be in.
There's a question I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
especially in Calcutta and Bengal.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since they've lifted sort of rights to Tagore's music.
Oh.
So, now people can interpret Tagore's music in their own way. And record, which is what you've done with someone like Faiz.
Faiz and Jalil and others, yes.
So, what kind of reactions did you get in Pakistan or elsewhere?
From the Puritans and so on?
Everything.
First, let me just tell them that the most wonderful part about Laal is that they do sing other songs also, but mostly they have given music to the poetry of Faiz and Jalil, so which also makes them my favorite band.
Thank you.
So we'll go on, yeah.
So I think. I think what we wanted to do was that, there's a very beautiful, long and rich tradition of singing Faiz and other progressive poets in the form of a ghazal in Pakistan. Nayyar Noor did it, Iqbal Bano did it, Apna Tahira Sayyed did it, Noor Jahan did it, so many others did it, and did it beautifully. So we felt that, I felt that we could not top that, and in any case, it had been done in that style so many times, so many different times that it was losing its, at that time, its originality, its edge, its connection, its oomph, if you like. So what I wanted to do is sort of take that poetry and do justice to it in terms of its sort of vocal melodies. So basically my vocal melodies, you could say, are quite similar to sort of classical or semi-classical rather, ghazal music or whatever, but to set it to more contemporary music that young people, you and I, if I can call myself amongst young people, could relate to, and could sort of connect to. If you ever notice, and young people want to hear, they love to hear that poetry. Previously it was thought by many of the record labels and television channels that were releasing us. They thought this is wonderful, a select group of people who listen to ghazals, etc. will enjoy Laal's music, but it could never become popular music as such, that young people, you could have big concerts and young people would be going more crazy with affairs or whatever. But we proved them wrong. We proved that it's possible to do classical poetry, take classical or neoclassical poetry like Faiz and Iqbal and even earlier Baba Farid and so many others, fuse it with other influences, sometimes jazz, sometimes blues, sometimes rock, sometimes pop, sometimes folk. Fuse it with other influences and do it in a convincing way which would also do justice to the poetry and to the message of the poetry.
So let's have you sing one.
Which one? Farida? So I'll take an old folk song, set it to guitar.
Yeah.
Well, actually the melody is also, it's an old folk poem, and it's been done in many other ways and with other melodies. So I took it and we did it with this particular melody and this particular progression. Here it is. And a bit about Baba Farid. Baba Farid is the first Punjabi poet who wrote in the actual vernacular Punjabi language. And he is venerated in Pakistan of course by Muslims, but he's also, his work is also part of the sacred works of Sikhism. And he is also venerated by Hindus. So he's venerated by all three of the major religions of Punjab, exactly, right? And I'm sure the Buddhists would also appreciate him, because so he speaks about spirituality here and about, he says, Farida turya turya ja, Farida, keep walking on, no matter the difficulties in your life, no matter all that's going around in the world, you have to keep struggling on, you have to keep walking on. So here it is. Farida,